Hello, happy Friday, thank God, eh? This is an email from Thomas. Thomas says, I wanted to get your opinion on recovery people on YouTube. I'm not sure if you've seen their channels, but they are practically all vegan, and some even make videos on how to lose weight. Shocking considering that these people suffer from anorexia and have a large viewership of people who suffer from eating disorders. These include YouTubers like Crazy Healthy Cool and Alice Olivia. Could you please share your thoughts on vegan YouTubers, or even veganism in general? I really feel like it's a hard truth those of us who have suffered with eating disorders need to hear. I know it can be controversial, but I think you would speak well on the issue. Well, I do not know who those people are. I don't watch YouTube, apart from often farrier videos. I do watch farrier videos, natural horse or barefoot trimming. So if I'm on YouTube, I'm usually watching a horse's foot being rasped. Oh God, I get slated whenever I talk about veganism, Thomas, because it upsets people. Look, and I'll say this, and I say this in every video that I do or anything I do about veganism. I don't have a problem with it if you don't have an eating disorder. I really don't. And I think that if a person does not have an eating disorder, then some people, not everybody's, but some people's bodies can do all right on a completely plant-based diet. But I actually think that that's also due to that person's genetics and that person's kind of heritage and what their ancestors ate a lot of. Because I know that for me, like, my ancestors, including my mum and my dad, if you think of them, they're not really ancestors, my parents are they? I don't think they come in that category, but whatever. The people that I come from eat a lot of cheese and butter. And I think that my parents have always eaten a lot of cheese and butter and dairy, that sort of thing. And so I know that for me, like, my body just comes from a line of bodies that have had a lot of dairy in their lives. And my body does really well on a lot of cheese. That's not true for everybody's bodies. Some people's bodies are lactose intolerant, like properly, and they can't even eat cheese. Some people just, they might like it, they might be able to eat it, but they just, like dairy, they're like, can take it or leave it. My husband's like that. He's not lactose intolerant or anything, but he likes cheese on pizza, but he's not gonna, it's not something that he really, really likes or eats a lot of. The point being that all of our bodies have this complicated and fascinating and wonderful history, and not just our history, but the history of the people that we come from, our parents and their parents and their parents and their parents and all of that. And our genetics will be influenced somewhat by that in the way we don't yet know. We're not that good at genetics yet. We don't know exactly how it all works out. But you just think about it common sense wise, that even if you look at certain families, different countries, different cultures, people eat differently. And generally, people, if they eat the way that their family eats or their culture eats, generally they do all right. And now we're in this like global, because of the internet culture, where we're all in each other's business a lot more. And so people just have a lot more judgment around food. And it's like, well, you shouldn't eat that way. And people that might say, well, veganism really worked for me, so therefore every single human on the planet needs to be a vegan, and it must work for all of you as well. That's a bit like me saying, I really like cheese and my body does very well when I eat cheese. So now everybody, I don't even believe in lactose intolerance, everybody else has to like cheese, and that should be the new diet. And it's just, we all need to shut up sometimes and just go, oh well. But so I think that main point was that really it depends on your individual body as to whether you might be able to be a vegan or not. That's like for people without eating disorders or anything. I do believe that if somebody has a restrictive eating disorder, then being a vegan and being on a vegan diet is probably not the best thing that they can do. And I'm not saying that everybody who has a restrictive eating disorder and is a vegan is just being a vegan because they have an eating disorder and it's a really convenient way to restrict food. But I am saying that a large percentage are. I was in that category, myself included. And you've seen my videos, I love animals, but I also eat animals. And I eat animals because every time I've tried not to eat animals, my body's kind of deteriorated somewhat and hasn't done as well. And so it may be, if I take away my thinking, my love of animals out of it and just go, well, my body just doesn't do that well when I'm not eating animal fat. in any way, shape or form. And so, and I'm not, it's like, that's just what I've recognized, a compromise that maybe I've had to come to because of my body, and everything's about compromise. But the problem is that the body doesn't compromise. So it's not like I could have a conversation with my body and be like, look, I really want to eat less animal stuff. I want to be vegetarian. And I know that you prefer meat, but this is really important to me, and I just really appreciate it if you would let me be vegetarian and, do well on a vegetarian diet. And my body goes like, oh, well, when you put it like that, yeah, all right, I'm going to try a bit harder. It's not like we can have that conversation. The body isn't compromised. The body just does, it's like code. It just does what it needs to do. My body does really well when it's got a little bit of animal fat, sometimes a lot in its diet. And so it's a very individual question as to whether or not a person can survive on a plant-based diet or not and be healthy. That's an individual-based question. But I think that if you have a restrictive eating disorder, and most of you that have had a restrictive eating disorder for a long time, you know that your eating disorder gets into everything, gets into absolutely everything. It's not just about the obvious things like food and exercise. It just kind of like wiggles its way into your career and your schoolwork, and it just turns everything into an excuse to do it in a way that your eating disorder likes. And so we have to sort of address lots of different things when we go into recovery and sort of like pull out the eating disorder influence and all these different things. And I just think it's going to be really, really difficult to do that properly if you are on a vegan diet. The other thing, and the other reason that I think that's important, is nothing to do with sort of even the neural rewiring stuff, because I think that the majority of this is like rewiring those restrictive tendencies and teaching your brain that you can eat absolutely anything. But the other thing is that if you look at, so you know that I really believe in the evolutionary advantages of why do we have these anorexia genetics and stuff like that, and see it as a migration response. Well, migrating animals and migrating humans would have been the same, is that when an animal or a human or whatever it is needs to migrate, what they tend to do is eat only things that they can hunt or gather on the way. So we eat lots of vegetables and fruit. Migrating animals will even do the same. They just only prefer to eat foods that they can kind of like eat as if they're on the move. They don't hunt as much. And humans that needed to migrate wouldn't have stopped and set up hunting camps and done all of that stuff. They would have just existed on fruits and vegetables as that aids the process of migration, is to eat those types of food. And the one thing that would have signified that the famine was over was when you find all the buffaloes and some very talented hunter with a spear goes out and kills a buffalo, and then everybody feasts on it. And so the existence of animal fat in the diet would have been one of the things that signified to the brainstem area, there's lots of abundant food in the environment again. And I don't think that you can do that with enough plant-based foods. I do think that some primitive part of when that migration response and part of when the anorexia brain is active, some primitive part of it is looking for animal fat to say like the famine's over. And I don't think that soy is going to do the trick. That's just my opinion. That is absolutely just my opinion based on what I know about human migration, evolution, eating disorders, genetics, and all of that stuff, and putting together the pieces. That's just my opinion on that. So if you're just blunt out asking for my opinion, I'm like, if you're a vegan and you want to fully, completely recover from a restrictive eating disorder, I highly suggest that you consider eating animal fat. It doesn't even have to be meat. Cheese will do. I'm a big proponent of cheese. Cheese is great stuff. So is full-fat milk and all of those delicious things. So I do think that you can recover and be vegetarian because you can get enough animal fats and saturated fats in your diet that way. There are plenty of people that will say I'm wrong, and there are plenty of people that say I fully recovered on a vegan diet, and I'm just going to say, hats off to you. I'm just talking from my experience. And remember, I was vegan, it was really not very good for me, and it was completely to do with my disorder. That was my experience, but I've also worked with hundreds of people as a recovery coach now. And I can't really say that I've worked with anybody that has made what I would call a full 100% recovery and been completely vegan during their recovery period. I've worked with people that have gone vegetarian during the recovery period, and then years and years later, if they still really wanted to go back to being vegan and they've fully recovered and have been for years, they've tried doing that. And some of them have then gone, you know what, this isn't all it's cracked up to me, I'm going to go back to being vegetarian. And some of them, to my knowledge, I think have done okay and maintained recovery. So I'm not saying that you can't go back to being vegan if you've been fully recovered long enough and you're really sure and you're really on it and you're really looking for the neural signs that your eating disorder neural network is spiking back up. But I am saying that those people are like more the exception than the rule, and most people know deep down that if they want to sustain a full recovery, they can't be vegan. So yeah, and I can't really comment on vegan YouTube people who have recovered because I haven't watched anybody, and quite frankly, I'm probably not going to either, because I'm just going to watch horse videos on YouTube.